Hey guys, Lord Naren White here, the Holy Ghost, the one true God, back with you with the next video in our series, Great Expectations, by Charles Dickens. Without further ado, returning to Great Expectations. The Queen of Denmark, a very buxom lady, though no doubt historically brazen, was considered by the public to have too much brass about her chin being attached to her diadem by a broad band of that metal, as if she had a gorgeous toothache, her waist being encircled by another, and each of her arms by another, so that she was openly mentioned as the kettle drum. The noble boy in the ancestral boots was inconsistent, representing himself as it were in one breath as an able seaman, a strolling actor, a grave digger, a clergyman, and a person of the utmost importance at a court fencing match, on the authority of whose practised eye and nice discrimination the finest strokes were judged. This gradually led to a want of toleration for him, and even on his being detected in holy orders, and declining to perform the funeral service, to the general indignation taking the form of nuts. Lastly, Ophelia was a prey to such slow musical madness that when in course of time she had taken off her white muslin scarf, folded it up, and buried it, a sulky man who had been long cooling his impatient nose against an iron bar in the front row of the gallery, growled, "Now the baby's put to bed, let's have supper," which, to say the least of it, was out of keeping. Upon my unfortunate townsman all these incidents accumulated with playful effect. Whenever that undecided prince had to ask a question or state a doubt, the public helped him out with it. As an example, on the question whether it was nobler in the mind to suffer, some roared yes and some no, and some, inclining to both opinions, said toss up for it, and quite a debating society arose. When he asked what such fellows as he do crawling between earth and heaven, he was encouraged with loud cries of "Hear, hear!" When he appeared with his stocking disordered, its disorder expressed, according to usage, one by one very neat fold in the top, which I suppose to be always got up with a flat iron. A conversation took place in the gallery respecting the paleness of his leg, and whether it was occasioned by the turn the ghost had given him. On his taking the recorders, very like a little black flute that had just been played in the orchestra, and handed out at the door, he was called upon unanimously for Rule Britannia. When he recommended the player not to saw the air thus, the sulky man said, "And don't you do it neither. You're a deal worse than him." And I grieve to add that peals of laughter greeted Mr. Wopsle on every one of these occasions. But his greatest trials were in the churchyard, which had the appearance of a primeval forest, with a kind of small ecclesiastical wash-house on one side, and turnpike gate on the other. Mr. Wopsle, in a comprehensive black cloak, being descried entering at the turnpike, the grave digger was admonished in a friendly way. "Look out! Here's the undertaker a-coming, to see how you're getting on with your work." I believe it is well known in a constitutional country that Mr. Wopsle could not possibly have returned the skull, after moralizing over it, without dusting his fingers on a white napkin taken from his breast. But even that innocent and indispensable action did not pass without the comment, "Waiter!" The arrival of the body for interment in an empty black box with the lid tumbling open, was the signal for a general joy which was as much enhanced by the discovery, among the bearers, of an individual obnoxious to identification. The joy attended Mr. Wopsle through his struggle with Laertes on the brink of the orchestra and the grave, and slackened no more until he had tumbled the king off the kitchen table and had died by inches from the ankles upward. We had made some pale efforts in the beginning to applaud Mr. Wopsle, but they were too hopeless to be persisted in. Therefore we had sat, feeling keenly for him, but laughing nevertheless from ear to ear. I laughed in spite of myself all the time. The whole thing was so droll, and yet I had a latent impression that there was something decidedly fine in Mr. Wopsle's elocution, not for old association's sake, I am afraid, but because it was very slow, very dreary, very uphill and downhill, and very unlike any way in which any man in natural circumstances of life or death ever expressed himself about anything. When the tragedy was over and he had been called for and hooted, I said to Herbert, "Let us go at once, or perhaps we shall meet him." We made all the haste we could downstairs, but we were not quick enough either. Standing at the door was a Jewish man with an unnatural heavy smear of eyebrow, who caught my eyes as we advanced and said, when we came up with him, "Mr. Pip and friend?" Identity of Mr. Pip and friend confessed. "Mr. Waldengarver," said the man, "would be glad to have the honor." "Waldengarver," I repeated, when Herbert murmured in my ear, "Probably Wopsle." "Oh," said I, "yes. Shall we follow you? A few steps, please. When we were in a side alley, he turned and asked, "How do you think he looked?" "I dressed him." I don't know what he had looked like, except a funeral, with the addition of large Danish sun or star hanging round his neck by a blue ribbon. That had given him the appearance of being insured in some extraordinary fire office. But I said he looked very nice. "When he come to the grave," said our conductor, "he showed his cloak beautiful, but, judging from the wing, it looked to me that when he see the ghost in the Queen's apartment, he might have made more of his stockings." I modestly assented, and we all fell through a little dirty swing door into a sort of a hot packing case immediately behind it. Here Mr. Wopsle was divesting himself of his Danish garments, and here there was just enough room for us to look at him over one another's shoulders by keeping the packing case door or lid wide open. "Gentlemen," said Mr. Wopsle, "I am proud to see you, I hope. Mr. Pip, you will excuse my sending round. I had the happiness to know you in former times, and the drama has ever had a claim which has ever been acknowledged on the noble and the affluent." Meanwhile, Mr. Waldengarver, in a frightful perspiration, was trying to get himself out of his princely sables. "Skin the stockings off, Mr. Waldengarver," said the owner of that property, "or you'll bust him, and you'll bust 35 shillings. Shakespeare never was complimented with a finer pair. Keep quiet in your chair now, and leave him to me." With that, he went upon his knees and began to flay his victim, who, on the first stocking coming off, would certainly have fallen over backward with his chair, but for there being no room to fall anyhow. I had never been afraid until then to say a word about the play. But then Mr. Waldengarver looked up at us complacently and said, "Gentlemen, how did it seem to you to go in front?" Herbert said from behind, "At the same time poking me." At the same time poking me. "Capitally." So I said, "Capitally." "How did you like my reading of the character, gentlemen?" said Mr. Waldengarver, almost, if not quite, with patronage. We'll go ahead and stop there for this week. As usual, I want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Please like, comment, and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. Light be with you all. Take care, and thanks again.